So this is why the Philippines fell behind in Asia. Lee Kuan Yew featuring Marcos.
Before martial law, it was an Asian version of the United States system. The Philippines press enjoyed all the freedoms, but they failed the Filipino people.
The late Lee Kuan Yew was once a strong advocate for the Philippines, recognizing it as one of the most developed nations in the 1950s and 60s. In his memoirs, he famously stated, "There was no reason why the Philippines should not have been one of the more successful ASEAN countries."
In the 1950s, economic development in the Philippines was better than that in Korea, comparable to that in Taiwan, and was at the lower end of the same bracket as Japan.
However, after decades of observation, he would become critical of various aspects of the Philippines, including his US-style political system, pervasive corruption, and media, warning all the way back in 1992 that if they didn't put their act together, they would be surpassed economically by their neighbors.
Every Filipino knows that all the other ASEAN countries have overtaken or are about to overtake the Philippines. If the next 6 years are wasted, the Philippines will lag behind even Vietnam.
As Vietnam surpasses the Philippines in GDP per capita for the first time since the 1990s.
Dang, dude.
Let's first examine Singapore's initial relationship with the Philippines and Lee's insights on the country, its leaders, and its culture.
I love the way Lee speaks, by the way. He speaks very elegantly and very poetically almost. And I think a lot of people back then used to speak like that. But I find that a very beautiful thing because it gets its point across without ever being too disrespectful, and it gets its point across in such a nice way, right? Rather than just coming on there and be like, "What are y'all doing?" Right? Like, you know what I mean? It's more so very, very like poetic, the speech. I found that a lot too from older generations. There was a lot more like poetry in the way they spoke.
If I were a Filipino to cheer myself, I would count my blessings and start in a positive frame of mind. The Philippines is immensely better off than Afghanistan, or Lebanon, or Sri Lanka. All these three have been torn apart by strife and war.
That's so scary.
Now, unlike these countries, the Philippines can pull itself together and get on with the job. And it has a good chance of success because it is part of a region which is set for high growth.
Lee's first official visit to the Philippines took place in 1974, where he was warmly welcomed by then-President Ferdinand Marcos. Initial relations were friendly, with Lee invited to stay at the lavishly furnished Malacanang Palace, where they would play golf and talk about the future of ASEAN. 2 years later, in 1976, the two countries further solidified their partnership by agreeing to a 10% reduction in tariffs as part of a broader trade initiative, laying the groundwork for enhanced economic collaboration and a more integrated Southeast Asia. However, following the assassination of opposition leader Benigno Aquino in 1983, Marcos's administration faced immense political and financial pressure, grappling with over $25 billion in debt after foreign banks halted loans to the Philippines. Unable to meet interest repayments, Marcos's administration would ask Singapore for a loan of $300 to $500 million, to which Lee would bluntly reply, "We'll never see that money back." Nevertheless, Singaporean banks would lend the Philippine government $8 billion, fully aware that repayment could take decades. In one of their last meetings, Lee would urge Marcos to hand over power to someone more capable of stabilizing the country. And to his surprise, Marcos agreed and referred to Lee as a true friend. But Marcos only let go of power a few years later after growing public discontent surrounding his autocratic rule and allegations of embezzling around $10 billion from public funds. The people,
You know, like being a president is so terrifying, bro. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, I feel like that fear came from, even if like you're a good president and like you can look at like in the US, I remember when I was in history class, one of the most terrifying things for me was like, you know, seeing they literally showed the footage of JFK and what happened to him in his car. Good Lord. That is so terrifying, man. And the wife like trying to pick up, I'm not even gonna go through that, man. It was very, very sad. And like, being a president is just so scary. I mean, he literally had a top-down car and someone, you know, assassinated him. But, like, stuff like that terrifies me being a president. But sometimes it really just takes a person who is very persistent, someone who really wants to see change and see change for, the beauty that it is. To make change, you have to see change in yourself first. And I feel like that is the most important thing to be a president. You really want to see change. You know what you're talking about. You kind of know these laws. And this is your life, and your life is dedicated to making a change that not only you see in yourself, but you want to see in the world in terms of the country that you are and the growth you want to see it in. And I won't lie, man, the Philippines, I'm seeing growth. Like, even if you guys may not see it, but like when I went, man, like BGC, for example, is incredible, bro. Like, most people would think that doesn't even exist if they've never heard of the Philippines. They would just assume that it's like a country that has literally like no buildings, but that's not the case. But yeah. Sorry, I got on a little rant about the president thing, but yeah, it's just so scary seeing like assassination and war and all that. It's just so terrifying, man. Like, what I mean? Sometimes that stuff just, be getting to me like in a scary way. It's like, bro, at the end of the day, like after all this, we're still human at the end of the day. So then seeing things get taken like crazy overboard is very terrifying.
Power revolution ultimately forced him and his close associates to flee to the United States in 1986.
The democratic system malfunctioned. Fortunately, a miraculous demonstration of people's power in February 1986 saved the country from impending disaster.
However, Lee observed that many of Marcos's family and close associates would gradually return to the Philippines over the years. In his memoirs, he criticized Filipino society for welcoming them back, describing it as a soft, forgiving culture. Only in the Philippines could a leader like Ferdinand Marcos, who pillaged his country for over 20 years, still be considered for a national burial. Insignificant amounts of loot have been recovered, yet his wife and children were allowed to return and engage in politics.
Have you ever engaged in any corrupt practices?
Wait. Yo, low-key, like that's like me if I cheated on my test and like, all right, guys, school's over. Have y'all ever cheated on your test? I'm like, God, like they would have played that prank on me, bro.
Not long after, Lee met Marcos' successor, Corazon Aquino, the first female president of the Philippines and widow of the assassinated Benigno Aquino. In a notable departure from tradition, where newly elected presidents typically make their first overseas visit to Washington, Aquino chose to visit Indonesia and Singapore instead, underscoring her commitment to strengthening ties in the region. Lee had high hopes that she would lead the Philippines to success, describing her as a sincere, devout Catholic who wanted to do her best for her country. Convinced of her potential, Lee successfully convinced the US administration in 1988 to initiate a foreign aid program that resulted in over $10 billion in pledges from various countries by 1991, all aimed at helping the Philippines get back on track. However, ongoing political instability deterred donors and delayed planned projects. With more than a dozen coup attempts since the overthrow of the Marcos government, Lee observed a critical absence of cohesion within Philippine society.
Dude, Lee is like the best friend you never have. Like, he's literally just convincing the United States to help the Philippines. Like, yo, this is literally like a best friend. Like, the Philippines is like his friend or something. I mean, obviously. But I mean, like, he's treating it like it matters so much. Like, it's almost like his like kid. Or a friend's kid. Like, he's really like, yo, the best friend you never have. Like,
stating that something was missing,
or you never had,
to hold society together. He would highlight the severe inequality that characterized the nation, describing it as divided into two distinct societies: the elite mixed-race mestizos living in luxury, and the impoverished peasants, whom they cared little about. In his memoirs, Lee also expressed profound concern about the brain drain affecting the Philippines during this period, stating that something had gone seriously wrong. Millions of Filipino men and women had to leave their country for jobs abroad beneath their level of education. Filipino professionals whom we recruited to work in Singapore are as good as our own. Indeed, the architects, artists, and musicians are more artistic and creative than Singaporeans.
Hey.
In Singapore, there are over 1,500 Filipinos, professionals, engineers, accountants, architects, managers, more than those from all other ASEAN countries. They hold their jobs on their merit. You will find that Filipinos can perform as well as Singaporeans or Thais or Malaysians or Indonesians.
After Aquino stepped down, Lee would meet Fidel Ramos in 1992, whom he described as more pragmatic and instrumental in establishing greater stability in the country than his predecessor. In the same year, Lee would reluctantly accept an invitation to speak at the Philippine Business Conference, mindful of not wanting to offend his hosts. But Filipino businessmen and public figures were eager to hear his candid insights, hoping to gain valuable perspectives on their country.
He is very candid.
When I received your invitation to speak, I hesitated. You must have known my attitudes from reports over the years.
During his speech, Lee outlined the numerous challenges facing the Philippines and some solutions for getting its economy back on track. One challenge Lee identified was with the Philippines' adoption of the US political system.
One problem which you have is that the Philippines has an American-style constitution, one of the most difficult to operate in the world. The Americans wrote this constitution in 1787 in Philadelphia. They wanted a weak executive president.
Oh, I love history. So cool.
At the hands of King George III of England, they wanted the opposite of a strong monarch. But you are a developing country, and developing countries faced with disorder and underdevelopment needs strong, honest executive government. The system worked in America because of a superabundance of resources and riches in a vast, underpopulated continent. I do not believe that Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, or Singapore could have succeeded if they had to work under such a constitution, where political gridlock on every major issue is the way of government. And you will notice for some 28 years now, the United States system has not functioned well in the United States.
Another problem is the Philippines' adoption of US-style free speech and press, stating that it has led to much confusion and contention among the people.
The Philippines press enjoyed all the freedoms, but they failed the Filipino people. A wildly partisan press helped Filipino politicians to flood the marketplace of ideas with junk and confuse and befuddle the people so that they could not see what their vital interests were in a developing country.
However, Lee would outline a series of tasks that the Philippine government could address more effectively, starting with tackling crime and corruption.
There must be a cleanup of racketeers in the police, whether for kidnappings or other crimes. The kidnapping of a Japanese executive in the Philippines, which took 6 months to settle, was enough to abort most Japanese investment plans. Kidnappings of local Chinese have increased. 3 victims, 2 university students and 1 businessman have been killed. Other crimes, especially corruption, must be suppressed and punished. It can never be eliminated, not even in Singapore. It is possible to weed out corruption, provided top political leaders set the examples and the pace. And
I feel like the good example of that is like with Italy, for example. If you set an example with things that happen there, and then you set an example also with corruption and other things like that, once you start setting that example, it'll be a lot less of them, but it's never going to go extinct. That's just not how it works. Just like crime, even in the United States, like you cannot stop all crime. There's going to be people who just want to do it. There's going to be evil people everywhere in the world. But what you can do is lower the fact, make it less easy to do the fact, right? Like that's the most that you can do. I've said this before as well. Like what you really want to do is not stop it. What you want to do is like lower it, right? As much as you possibly can by setting examples or scaring them or making certain laws that kind of like push them away from doing that. Like, ooh, I should not steal from the grocery store because I'll get like this many years or something, right? Like there's certain things to it. And then also the being fair. This is like a whole like, thing that you have to really pay attention to. But dude, I love the way he's speaking about this because I can almost listen to him forever in the way that he speaks very, very efficiently.
Efficient and a strong anti-corruption unit under the president with powers to investigate any person, however high up, and to carry it to a successful prosecution will work wonders.
Next, Lee emphasized that the government should dismantle the policies that protect inefficient oligarchs to dominate the economy.
The second task is to free the economy from controls and monopolies. The nationalist industrialization rhetoric has benefited only a group of inefficient oligarchs, including some heading US-owned firms. The tariff barriers had been a major element in of an intricate web of regulations that have shackled the Philippines, shackled its entrepreneurs, and only nurtured the favored few, cartels and monopolies, from banking to telecommunications to shipping. If you stick to your old policies because vested interests are too strong, too powerful to overturn, then Filipinos will lag further and further behind our ASEAN neighbors. Lift restrictions on trade and investment, dismantle the web of measures which keep out foreign companies and make Philippine companies compete to survive, not thrive at the expense of the ordinary Filipino.
The next task will be getting Filipinos to take politics more seriously, calling on the press to educate the masses.
If the Ramos administration can make ordinary Filipinos understand that politics is not simply elections with singing and fiestas and giveaways, but that it is about their lives, their jobs, their wages, their homes, schools for their children, hospitals, then the situation can change dramatically.
Yeah, to keep it separate.
The Philippines has a lively and a robust press. I think they should undertake this vital job of educating the Filipino voter of the link between political policies, macroeconomic reforms, low inflation, confidence, law and order, with his welfare. And if they take that as their national duty, it can be done.
And finally, Lee emphasized that the Philippines must address its infrastructure challenges, particularly noting that frequent electrical blackouts significantly deter foreign investment.
Third, build up your infrastructure like power stations, roads, communications, either in partnership with or completely through the private sector. There's huge losses suffered by industrial and commercial establishments due to the electricity shortages and scheduled power blackouts, averaging 7 hours a day, with foreign investors closely monitoring the country for a stable political transition. The infrastructure problem is publicity it can ill afford.
Lee concluded that the Philippines can overcome all these challenges. There is no reason why they can't succeed.
I hope I have provoked you into setting your priorities for getting your act together so that you can achieve your potential. If you maximize the next 6 years of the Ramos administration, then you will get yourselves back into the mainstream of growth and development and be in the same league as Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia. The OECD calls them now the new dynamic economies of Asia. You can be and should be one of them.
Wow. I low-key feel like coming to a place like that and actually giving advice is like one of the most beautiful things. It's heartfelt, right? And me personally, I want to see the Philippines continue to grow because, yes, like he mentioned, it's not about gift giving when it comes to politics and doing that and singing, right? Because don't get me wrong, the Philippines known for incredible singers. They are one of the most talented, if not the most talented country in the entire world. I stand by that forever, no matter what anyone says. They are the greatest singers. But that has to be separate when it comes to like politics and things like that, because you can't sing your way to election, and you can't just like think about it like that and giveaways only. It's really about being like firm and doing something that's good for the homes and families of the Philippines and stuff like that. So I do find that beautiful in the way that he explained that, because he did recognize that there is singing, right? He recognized it, so they've always had the singing, which is wonderful. But like he emphasized, it is about that, and the Philippines should be in this level, or in the level of Indonesia and all these other places like in Asia. And I find that really wonderful because the Philippines really does have potential, and you can see him treating them as like his best friend, really just giving advice. And if I was there, bro, I would have been writing it down. I'm writing each one down. But it's incredible that this information is still here and was recorded, because it's something that Philippines can always look back on. It's like that one friend's advice that you don't remember. Man, what did he say? What did he say? That's happened to me before. But thankfully, this is written down. It's been said on a speech, and this is recorded. So like people can look back at this and really understand and see new information. It's really dope. I really love it, man. I love to see the Philippines grow and continue to grow. So we got to keep that going, man. Incredible.
More than 30 years after Lee's speech, the Philippines has made significant strides across various sectors. However, issues that Lee pointed out, such as kidnappings, corruption, and frequent blackouts, remain prevalent in 2024. Lee himself rarely referenced the Philippines in his later writings or speeches. And while relations between the Philippines and Singapore have generally been strong, the treatment of overseas Filipino workers have occasionally sparked contention. A significant flashpoint occurred in 1995 with the execution of Flor Contemplacion, a Filipino domestic worker convicted of murdering another maid and a 3-year-old boy in Singapore. This incident provoked widespread outrage and protests in the Philippines, even prompting future Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte to call for a boycott of Singaporean goods and even urge Filipinos to burn the Singaporean flag in response. Additionally, in 2003, during the economic fallout from the SARS crisis, Lee would find himself defending Filipino workers amid rising discontent among Singaporeans regarding foreign labor.
And the boys are asking, why are the Filipinos still here when we are losing our jobs?
If we say tomorrow all foreign workers leave, I think Singapore will be worse off. So I'm sorry if I cannot give you a simple answer, yes, let's sack the Filipino. Can't be done.
Fast forward to today,
He's being honest.
The Philippines and Singapore celebrate a robust partnership, marking 55 years of diplomatic relations. This enduring relationship encompasses cooperation across various sectors, including economics, technology, education, and defense. With a young English-speaking population, Lee recognized the Philippines' immense potential, and today, Singapore continues this trend as one of the Philippines' largest investors and trade partners. With the ambitious New Clark City development catching the eyes of various Singaporean firms, eager to capitalize on the country's growth. In his memoirs, Lee concluded that if the Filipino people could hold their leaders accountable, there'd be no limit to what they could achieve.
Wow. Some Filipinos write and speak with passion. If they could get their elite to share their sentiments and act, what could they not have achieved? That's beautifully said. Yeah, because even when I mention about music and everything else, they do a lot with compassion. They do it a lot with passion and in the way they speak, the way they do things. Just imagine what they could achieve, or what could they not have achieved. He's basically saying everything could be done for them because of how they already are as a person. That's beautiful. Very beautiful video. Hey, man, thank you guys for linking this over, and thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Hey, till next time, guys. Peace.
How good you been living? Wait, how good you been living? I've been living too good for you. I've been living too. Did what I did and I do it again. Every move that I make, I ain't feeling repent. Nobody believes to believe it's a friend, and you question your moves like you really won't end.